So first of all, thank you everybody for joining this morning. I am delighted to have a very quiet household this morning. The last of my children are back at school, so I think we're all back to normality. And hopefully the sun will start shining over the next few weeks or next few days. So for those of you who haven't been on one of these webinars before, my name is Christelle Rinn, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at HRLocker. And today what we're going to be focusing on is efficient HR practices and looking at applying lean methodology to those practices. So I'm a big advocate of both lean and agile, and I really think a lot of these methodologies can be used in your day-to-day practices. And sometimes we think that just because we're not in the manufacturing space or the tech space that we can't apply these to our practices. So I'm just going to go through them. I'm not going to give you a full-on training session on lean, but I'm going to give you some brief overviews of it. And please, if you have any questions throughout, like I said, I'd love to have the questions. So drop in your questions and hopefully I'll be able to answer them for you. Okay. Sorry, like I said, bear with us as we are using a new Teams system today, and I'm just going to take myself off screen. Perfect. Okay. So I suppose when we look at lean in regards to specifically a HR side of things, so lean came about, first of all, specifically around the manufacturing side of things. And that's typically where you would see it being used. And it's all about looking at optimizing efficiencies and making everything effective. So it's really looking at your daily practices and your policies and how can you reduce the waste around these things. And that's kind of how it came about. It looked at in terms of your manufacturing side of things and looking at the different processes and focusing on how can you actually reduce costs by reducing the waste in those processes. So when we look at how you can apply lean into your HR processes, the main thing that you want to be looking at is ultimately, at the end of the process, you want to be looking at, say, reducing costs, but also reducing waste. So hopefully at the end of it, you get increased efficiencies around your HR practices, that your initiatives are all very, very strategic and it's very much business focused and business aligned. Because you're not doing sometimes things just for the sake of doing them. So sometimes we can look at streamlining a lot of the admin side of things. So I suppose it gives good quality job design for a lot of people who would be in that administration function in HR, or even the manager side of things if managers are working with you from a hiring process. So it's really focusing on that quality job design as well. And hopefully, if we have wonderful processes, people processes, then our people are happy and they stay with us longer as well. So I could spend another half an hour talking about the benefits, but we'll go straight into it. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on giving you a lesson on what lean is. But typically when we look at lean came in from a Toyota perspective and looked at, I suppose, looking at maintaining quality while lowering cost. So there's a number of different methodologies, but the three areas that I'm going to be talking about today is the value stream mapping, waste reduction, and continuous improvement. So when we look at the value stream mapping, what that's going to be looking at is all your processes and focusing on mapping them out and where do we see value. And then when we look at the waste reduction, or MUDA, so in these processes, where do we see waste? So where do we see that we're maybe duplicating something, or a lot of the time we just do things because we've always done it. So really kind of trying to optimize. So look at the processes and then look at identifying areas that are wasteful that we can replace or just take out, or maybe we just aren't needed anymore. And then once we've that all done, we continuously look at continuous improvement. So that's very important in regards to, we can do all these wonderful designs and put in all these processes and improve all your processes. But the only way that they continue to work is focusing on a Kaizen methodology of continuous improvement, and that's a big thing in Lean as well. So I would say on any of these projects, we need to be looking at that continuous improvement as well. So these are the 3 words I'll be using at any stage. If you've forgotten what they mean, just put up your hand or drop a question in. Okay, so if we look at the value stream mapping, okay, so I'm just going to give an example of, I suppose, a sample of what a value stream map would look like. So usually there'd be these basic elements for each value stream map. So the first one is the customer. So who is the actual recipient of the value? For example, if it's a new hire, so who actually is the person who's going to be affected most by this process? The supplier, so it could be your job boards or recruitment agency. Where does the information come from? Are there any physical materials involved? Your value added activities, so things that create value for the customer. The non-value added, so this is really where we're going to be trying to improve, which is this wasteful area. So are there things that we can streamline? For example, a really easy one to look at is, are you posting jobs on 16 different job boards and you're just pressing continuously, just copying and pasting? So it's not really adding much value. It is a job that has to be done, but how can we look at either eliminating it or streamlining it? So it's just an easy way to understand it. Total time to complete the process. During the stage, you need to decide, okay, are you happy with that lead time? If it takes, 2 months, are you happy with that? Or is the solution that you're trying to put in here, is it looking at trying to bring down that time? So is it a case of that, ultimately you feel that your recruitment process is taking too long and you want to bring that down? And what would good look like? So, but right now, all we're doing is saying, okay, so during the recruitment process, we might spend a lot of time posting jobs up on various different job boards, or maybe manually getting back to people. Lead time, perhaps we're saying it's going to take 3 months. Excuse me. So you're going to just do this for every single process, and it's really important at this stage when you're mapping your processes that you're just being really honest, that this is actually how it works, because we want to get a baseline of how the process actually works. So if you are manually going to 16 different job boards and copying and pasting, put that down, because there's no point in saying, well, hopefully we won't be doing that in future. This is just bare face what your processes actually are, and just be as honest as possible during this time. So again, I'll just give you this as an example of one. So we can put in here, for example, the customer. So who owns this process, or who is affected by the process of the recruitment process, would be the hiring manager. The suppliers, the job boards, they're the main people that's the main supplier that we're dealing with from a HR perspective. So things that we use to get information, we use job descriptions, we use applications, we use interview notes, for example. What things do we get from this? We get lots of resumes, hopefully. Value added activities, so things that we might be able to use again in the future. For example, we write good job descriptions, so we may be able to reuse them. We screen resumes, so we may be able to, we're going to use those resumes going forward. There's a value add to that. Interviewing candidate, making hiring decisions, and then onboarding the new hire. Those things add value to us as a company, and this is what you're going to get out of this process. The non-value added things, so these are all just your admin, basically. Things that don't add value, things that make people cross, things that are difficult. So, reposting job descriptions, like I said, waiting for approvals. So, for example, from a HR side of things, you could be, from a hiring manager perspective, you could be all gung-ho, ready to go, and it might take 3 months to get it approved, things like that. Scheduling interviews back to back. So it's difficult for people. Are you actually gaining value out of that, or is it better that you're doing it over a 3-day process? Whatever. Lack of clear interview criteria. So things that don't add value could be that if you don't have the correct scoring mechanisms or things like that, and from your interview side of things, that maybe you need to repeat the candidate isn't going to stay. It's not successful. You might have to do the job again. Right now, the lead time is 60 days, and the cycle days on average, I've just put here that it takes 20 days to fill the job. Okay, so, and you put in basically your scoring for each of these, okay, your lead time for each section in it, okay? So then so I'll just stay here. So just for example, so this is now when we go through, it's a bit of a job for everybody to do, but you need to go through each one of your processes, be as honest as possible. A lot of the time when I do this work with companies, it's the biggest obstacle that I get to with people is that I don't need to know what your fictional processes are. I don't need to know that this is what you want to achieve at the end of the process. At this stage, all we want to know to get your lean project starting is how do your processes actually work? Okay. So then if we go to the next step here, so now we've outlined all the processes and it's all working and we have them all outlined. We're being as honest as possible. We 100% know all the information. Okay. Then we start to identify the waste. Sorry, and I just have a little question here that somebody's struggling to see me on the screen. If you guys can just give me a little thumbs up that you guys are okay seeing with me, and I'll keep going then as well. But just, Nikki, if you could just double check that. Okay. Perfect. Okie doke. So then we go into the identifying the waste side of things. So again, don't be too deterred by I suppose the language of this, because a lot of the time the language was obviously initially created from a manufacturing perspective. We're taking and adapting from a HR side of things. So, you know, don't be say, well, from, you know, transportation, that doesn't make any sense to me because we're not transporting anything in HR. So we try to bring it back down to kind of the physical side of things. So transportation. So in regards to recruitment, okay, so for example, you could be still printing off your paper-based interview notes and your paper-based CVs, and you're taking it and physically bringing it from office A to office B. Just an example. So motion. So in regards to like how fast does this take? And sometimes things can, sometimes badly written job descriptions might slow down the process. Waiting. So for example, hiring managers, again, like maybe need to get approvals, get an approval at some stage, or, you know, so where is that kind of, where is there a delay, basically? The inventory. So, you know, I think, sorry, just recruitment sometimes is the easiest one to look at. So when we look at recruitment from an inventory perspective, is sometimes if we have badly written job descriptions or a bad process in regards that we might not have a, you know, sometimes with an applicant tracking system, you can put in kind of pre-qualification questionnaires. So if you have a absolutely massive amount of CVs that come through and a lot of them are unqualified, that slows down the process because you need to go through all of them. So over processing. So again, maybe you don't have the correct thing, so we have to keep on processing it over and over again. And defects. So ultimately, this is where we don't want to get to, is obviously when we've gone through the entire process and we've hired the wrong candidate and we have to do it again. So that's why we need to be as honest as possible from day one when we're looking at that value stream map. We have to make sure that it is done correctly. It's outlined properly, and now let's start looking and being honest where we look at that sometimes things are a bit wasteful. Okay, so now we'll get into the taking action. So once we know where the mood or the waste exists, we can start to see, well, how can we improve the process? Okay, so for example, if we utilize job boards and just from a recruitment perspective, maybe to reduce that physical transportation, for example, of printing out the physical CVs, and maybe bringing them from office A to office B. Maybe we put in an applicant tracking system and we give the hiring managers access to those CVs, and they can maybe use them on an iPad or on their laptop, and maybe we bring in a no paper policy or something like that, and it streamlines the application process. I always think a really good place to start on this as well especially from recruitment processes. Sometimes we love to post jobs on all the job boards, and it takes a lot of time. So a good way to look at is actually reviewing the job boards that you're currently using. Just because you posted it on Indeed and Glassdoor for the last 5 years, maybe have a look and see, do you ever actually hire anybody from either of those job boards? You might get a lot of applications from them, but just to maybe streamline what actually works for you as a company. This, I think, is from an improvement process. Developing clear and concise job descriptions is a really, really easy win for people, and it's a really good way to eliminate an excess of candidates as well. So, and actually this can work both ways as well, because you can actually also bring in, just going to jump back here, the over processing side of things. So sometimes our job descriptions may be too strict and they may be very, very insular. So sometimes if we broaden it up a bit, we might get more candidates. And sometimes if we get too many candidates, we might need to bring it down a bit. So have an honest review of your job descriptions to make sure that the candidates that you're looking for match the job description. If you're getting an excess of if you're getting an excess of applications, look at your job description and be more specific. If you're not getting enough, then maybe you'll broaden up the job description a bit, if applicable, obviously. This as well, a really easy way to look at in regards to your interview process. If you have a HR team that are doing all the interviews, does the hiring manager need to get involved? How many steps are in the actual interview process? Do you need to have all the steps? Just because you always did 4 interviews, do you actually need to have 4? Can you maybe break it down to 2? Who actually needs to be involved in those processes? So just have an honest, clear discussion with regards to your hiring managers, maybe senior management, in regards to who they want to be involved with and what interviews they actually want to be involved in, and start to see, can you eliminate waste in that side of things? Maybe, you don't need to have that first round interview with the senior manager. Maybe they need to be on the second round, things like that. So lots of things you can do when you're automating things as well, obviously, in terms of batch interview scheduling and automate pre-screening stages. I always use a good example of a customer that we were dealing with, and they were recruiting for an internship, and they were getting about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications, which is fantastic, but they only took interns who had completed this one specific degree that was done specifically around agriculture, and they wanted this one specific course. So we put in a pre-screening process to say, have you this done or not? So people could still apply for the job, but if they answered no, you wouldn't need to consider them straight away. So it actually halved their recruitment time, because they didn't have to look through hundreds and hundreds of applications to see did they actually have the specific qualification that they needed. So those kind of things from an automation perspective can really, really reduce time. And when we look at lowering recruitment costs, I think the key thing from HR side of things is that it isn't just the recruitment cost of paying a recruiter or paying a job board. It's also the recruitment cost of actually just time. So, if it's going to take me 3 or 4 days to screen candidates, there's a cost to my time. So if you start to kind of automate some of that process and we bring it down to maybe a day and a half, that's a huge cost saving element as well. Everybody gets a better experience. Candidates on cross that they've spent ages and ages going through a recruitment process that has taken you ages to get back to them. So the candidate is happy as well, and we know that's important from an employer branding perspective. And hopefully we get an improved quality hire as well, because maybe the hiring managers in the process. So once we identify all those wastes, we can start to improve. Okay. And then when I do this job with companies, they say, well, that's fantastic. We've put in all these improvements and we've improved everything. And then unfortunately, I do have to tell them, we've done so much job. We've done such a great job here. We put in all these improvements and we have identified all this waste, and we've really looked towards the next stage here, and we can see that things are really improving, but it doesn't end there. And that's when, from a lean perspective, it's really, really important that we want to look at that continuous improvement, because we can always get better. Things change, the environment changed, people change. So we really have to look at, okay, well, how do we is this process still working? Is there anything else that we can improve? Are there any kind of small nuances that we can keep improving? And that doesn't have to be that we have to look at it every month for improvement. Sometimes we can just have all these processes in place and we just need to be reviewing them every maybe 6 months, every 12 months, whatever it makes sense for you as a company. Sometimes there's some processes don't need to be reviewed. They maybe need to be reviewed once a year, but it's really important that we keep reviewing and making sure that we get feedback from people. So that's one of my, I suppose, most important things. If you take one thing from today's webinar, is that I like to look at from feedback from stakeholders. So especially in regards to the hiring process, again, if we just stay with that example, that if we have hiring managers who are part of the process, that we ask their feedback and we ask, well, what do we think of the improvements? Is it actually helping? Do you feel like you've gotten better candidates? Do you feel like the process was a little bit easier? And if their honest response is no, then we need to go back to the drawing board again and see, well, why do people think the process hasn't improved? And I also think celebrating the successes is a really good one as well. Sometimes we just get very insular. Well, I do anyway, we get very insular, put in all of these process changes. People are doing a great job and we forget to celebrate the win as a team, to be able to say, you know what, we have really streamlined recruitment. We've brought the hiring down from 2 months to 6 weeks. We've reduced cost here and we've done a great job. And, just as collaboratively as a team, we've really, really improved. And just to keep that kind of communication going. And sometimes with that, the celebrating the wins and the successes, it gets people more brought into the process, that when you're reviewing the process again in 12 months' time, sometimes a little bit of excitement to see, well, how can we improve this more? Because I was part of that process and we improved it so well to beginning with. As you can see, I just think the continuous improvement in the lean side of things, if you're applying it properly to your processes, you can just get huge benefit, both from an employee experience perspective, but also from an employee engagement side of things. So you're just bringing it all nice round and center. Okay. So I'm not going to bore you with these because I hope I've already convinced you that there's just huge amount that you can improve from a lean improvement side of things. I'm just going to pop on here as well. So the other side of things is that, right now, we are living in a world of sustainable people practices. We're also living in a world of ESGs and SDGs and all the sustainability side of things, and HR can really align our processes with that. So when we look at, I suppose, from a sustainable people practice, when we look at the kind of the workforce of the future, or aligning with governance, risk and regulation, our economic impact, environmental impact, it's kind of the S in that ESG side of things, is how can we actually align our processes with all these extra things that are coming down the line from HR side of things. That this can be a really good time to do that, because we've all been told, okay, well, let's look at that S and the ESG side of things. So when we're looking at our processes, let's see, can we start aligning them with our ESGs and SDGs? And here's one I prepared earlier. But excuse me. So we've created our lean initiatives here, for example, and one of the lean initiatives was to streamline recruitment. I've aligned it with one of the CIPD framework pillars here, which is people, practices and processes. What's the potential social impact? So it's going to reduce time to fill vacancies, therefore it's going to improve candidate experience. Is there any potential environmental impact? So we're going to look at that. It's going to be reducing paper usage, might be low energy consumption because we're going to spend less time processing CVs. And so stay with me here, I'm just closing the circle. And potential economic impact, there's going to be a reduce in hiring cost, and we can possibly align it to our SDGs, which if anybody is doing their ESGs and SDGs, so this is so we can align it with SDG 8 and SDG 12. So we can do a lot of work here in regards to really focusing on the strategic alignment of how our people processes align with the overall company goals in regards to social impact, environmental impact, economic impact, and our overall SDGs as well. But we've got to start at step 1 first. I hope I haven't completely confused you with the ESGs and SDGs, but I just think at this stage, for companies, That's where you want to get to. Now, I'm also talking 10 steps ahead here. When we want to start first, we want to just start first, it's just identifying the processes. But this is where you can get to, and this is a very mature model that I'm showing you here, but this is ultimately where you can get to, which I think is, I suppose it really kind of rounds the circle. I'm just going to show you one again. Here's the one here I prepared earlier. I suppose when we go into companies, what we're really looking for is we're going to start this project with you in regards to your lean processes and identifying your HR side of things. And ultimately, what we want to know first is what are your goals and objectives? Because there's no point in starting any project like this if you don't have a goal. So what are your goals? Maybe it could be that you want to increase employee engagement, you want to reduce the administration side of HR, you want to digitize HR, you want to perhaps introduce more AI into HR, or you want to maybe align your HR processes with your ESGs or SDGs. So start first with what your goals and objectives are, and they don't have to be huge. It can just be a baseline of, well, what do you actually want to achieve and of putting in this process of lean, of implementing lean into your HR side of things. What are the metrics for success? Is it a case of that you want to reduce man hours on administration? And do you want to reduce time to hire? Do you want to improve employee engagement? What are your actual metrics for success? What are the resources needed? Most of the time here, it's people. So who actually is required in this project? And what are the risks and challenges? And I'll tell you the biggest risk and challenges when you're doing a project, that you all have day-to-day jobs that have to be done. So this is an additional project that you'll be putting in. So most of the time, the risk and challenges is time. And that's okay. When you're looking at these projects, you need to make sure that you're being realistic with your time. You've all got day-to-day jobs. Payroll has to be done. People have to be hired. Recruitment has to be done. Day-to-day HR activities and work has to be done. So it's trying to align how this fits in with your day-to-day. So the action plan. So for example, these are the processes that you actually want to improve. What's the type? So this is where we go into a little bit of a lean methodology here as well in regards to, is it something we're just going to do? Is it a Kaizen event? Is it a bigger project? Is it another? What's the business driver? And this is, again, important from a business strategic perspective. When we're putting in a project like this, is it a reputational side of things, financial, regulatory, or operational? What is the target, who, next step, and the target completion? So that is the target completion date, which I think is really important from a just a reality side of things, is that there's no point in saying you're going to complete this all in 3 days when in reality you just don't have the time to do that. So it's important that you're actually being honest. Okay, I do have a question here, and I'm very sorry, from Sylvia in regards to, can you remind me, what does ESG and SDG stand for? So your ESG is your environmental, social, and governance. And I suppose for companies, there's some companies, I think it's over 250, who will have a legal obligation to be reporting from the CSRD reporting. But for companies less than that, it's going to come down the line. But also, if you're in the people supply chain, you need to be looking at your ESGs and your SDGs. Your SDGs are your Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm going to put a link in a second, which is your UN Sustainable Development Goals. Why are these important? From a HR perspective, we own the S in the ESG side of things. So ESG is environmental, social, and governance. So E, which is your environmental side of things, which is if you've got any your carbon, your greenhouse gases, things like that. Your S is your social side of things. So that is what we are doing in regards to making sure that that your employee engagement, it's your mental health awareness, it's how we're affecting people's day-to-day lives, things like that, and governance as well. So we do also have a lot of that as well in regards to governance, being even just the Working Time Act, things like that. So making sure that we are familiar with with that side of things. The Sustainable Development Goals, I'm just going to pop back here. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and sorry, it's nice to align them. it's good to align them. Let me put it that way. And no matter what size your company is, you can affect these. So, for example, we've chosen 5 SDGs ourselves, the company that we want to work on. So it's our social development goals. And so when people ask us what is our ESG strategy, we give them the 5 SDGs that we have chosen as a company and what we do to work on them. And a lot of that is HR based. So some of it would be, for example, decent work and economic growth. So that's, as a company, we've committed to making sure that our employees have decent work, that they get paid well, that we're not, if we're hiring people outside of the EU, that they get paid a good living wage, things like that. Some of these might be a little bit more specific if you're working in like a manufacturing or construction area. Obviously, we're in software. So responsible consumption and production, SDG 12. That can be, for example, ourselves is we any of the suppliers that we have, we want to make sure that they have a long-term carbon neutral goal. So we make sure that we only work with companies who are have an environmental goal at the end of the day. Good health and well-being, that's a really nice one, an SDG as well to choose as a company, and you can align that in regards to your employee engagement objectives and things like that. So that's what your SDGs are. I can do a completely different session on that. We've actually done one a couple of months ago, which I will I can send on afterwards. Who comes up with the list of SDGs? Miriam, I'm going to ask you. So I'll tell you how we did it as a company. So there are a specific list of 17 UN SDGs, okay? Your Sustainable Development Goals. What I did here, and again, I'm happy to have a further conversation with anybody about this, is what we did here is I brought together a sustainable task force. So asked anybody in the company who would like to join the task force. And we had about 20% of the company who joined the task force. So I was quite surprised. Usually I'm kind of dragging people to join the task forces. And went through all the SDGs and asked people as a company, how do we think that we can affect these? Because that's, I suppose, it's the value of our company. So it's the value of our employees. How did they think that we could affect these going forward? The ones that we chose were around, say, good health and well-being. So our employees are important to us. We do wellness days, we do birthday days off. There's a lot that you're doing that you don't realize actually affect the SDGs. So what do we do currently that affects good health and well-being? We do wellness days, we do mental health days, we do a kind of a chair lattes, which is Pilates at the desk on a Monday for people. And how do you advocate for good health and well-being? So that was one, but we want to increase. One of our objectives was increase engagement around that. Some of them were around, for example, the responsible consumption and production. The tech guys are really interested in that because I would never have come up with this. They chose that one because they wanted to look at the amount of servers that we use and to make sure that we're optimizing them all. Maybe reduce the technology consumption around that, or the energy consumption around that, because obviously the data centers would be hugely technology heavy. So that's what we did. We sat down with the team and we chose the SDGs. But the key thing is they have to align with your business principles as well and your business practices. But honestly, I'm happy to have a call with anybody on that. It's kind of a longer discussion. But I do think that what you have to start with first is look at your actual processes that you're doing and see how they can align with your SDGs, which I think is a good one. So that is, I hope that answers your question, doesn't totally confuse you, but Marie, if you'd like to contact me directly and I can spend another hour and a half talking to you about SDGs, I'd be delighted to. And I would also say for most companies, we think we're too small that your ESG and SDG isn't going to affect you. It will affect you down the line. So it's something to get ahead of now and to make sure you as a company understand it and see what you're doing now, because I bet you're doing loads of things that actually do align to the SDGs. Okay, sorry, totally went off tangent there. My deepest apologies. Anyway, So back to our value stream mapping, and I just want to show you how everything ties together in a lovely bow. Okay, so what I have here is a huge spreadsheet that that hopefully you guys won't do yourselves, and you'll come to me and I'll help you to do. So we'll go through the value stream mapping first. So what I do is first is go through every single process that you currently do. For example, your recruitment, this onboarding. So how we go through each of the process steps, what the lead time is. So we go through all that with you. And that's, we start first with our value stream mapping. Then we want to go through, okay, well, out of all the value stream mapping, where do we actually want to, what do we actually want to benefit? So what are our goals here? Do we want to problem solve? What's the proposed solution? What's the expected benefit? So we're putting in this project. So what do we actually want to get out of it at the end of the day? Then we'll go through, after our value stream, we'll go through all the waste that we've identified. Hopefully there's loads, and hopefully we can really improve everything. Then we go through the process improvements. So now we'll put in all the improvements. So we'll go through, say, for example, recruitment. What was the step that we've done to improve the process? Before improvement, improvement action, after improvement. So and the responsible person, which is really important. We put all these lists, assign them out to people, which is important. And then we put in through the your Kaizen event planning. So basically, who's responsible for continuously reviewing these processes. And then there's a couple of templates that I have here just in regards to your employee feedback, which is important, putting in your standard operation templates, and also your return on investment calculation, which is important with any of these projects. But hopefully, so I'm just a bit conscious of time, so when we're going through some of these projects, again, like I said, the biggest thing is time, because everybody has day jobs. There are a number of different grant options available for putting in a project like this. Some of them are Enterprise Ireland, some of them are local enterprise. There's the Lean Start grant, where you get 80% of the cost covered for lean coaching. So you get about €5,000 towards it. And you'll get somebody like me to come in and go through all your processes, try to work with you. Well, not try, work with you in regards to putting in all your improvements, aligning them with working with you in regards to figuring out what your SDGs are and how you're going to align them, and figuring out how much, what your return on investment will be on any of these processes. And that's what we do with companies. We work with companies in regards to, working with them in, I suppose, figuring out what objective you want to get out of putting in a lean process, how we can help you. Is there a grant available for you to do this for you, and how it aligns with your overall company objectives. Just a question there. Can you watch this back, as I missed a few minutes of it? Yes, it's recorded, and towards the end of the day, or we will send out the recording to everybody. Excuse me. So we're happy to work with anybody in regards to if they want to look at looking at the funding opportunities there for people who are putting in either that lean or digital transformation in regards to their HR processes. If you are an Enterprise Ireland client and or a local enterprise client, please do come and talk to us. It's an area that I'm very passionate about in regards to how you can actually look at achieving better processes, look at really kind of focusing on the improvements, things that you can actually work with. And that's the side of things, is that it's very difficult when you're the only HR person working in a very, very, very busy environment. So you kind of take that's why the grant is there, that you can take a company in to help you work through it. So if my contact details will be sent with to anybody afterwards, and I presume most of you have it. But thank you everybody so much for taking the time to listen to me. Any questions, please get in contact with me. I'm always happy to have a chat with anybody, especially around SDGs and ESGs. But thank you so much. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and hope to talk to you all soon. So thank you very much, and take care.